After an hour and a half at tramp, they returned to Maxwell's home. All of us went upstairs, and I asked Jeffrey to snap a picture of me with the prince, Robert said. I wanted something to show my mom. The picture, which was to remain unknown for a decade, would prove Andrew's downfall. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. We're going to keep going and entitled, this is the book about Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. Until the last episode, it had mostly been about Sarah, but we really are starting to dive into Andrew's story. We really started to talk about Andrew when we also collectively started talking about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Those two entered his world, and all of that is so publicly documented that whatever objections the palace may have had to Andrew Loney writing about Prince Andrew is sort of dispelled when we start talking about the public record of him with these other public figures. You can't hide the things Andrew had been doing when it's in association with another public figure. All of his maybe tawdry romances, poor judgments, pathetic excuses for ways to use his time are more easily hidden when they're sort of under the purview of, say, the military or things he was doing with the palace, royal duties. But when you start looking at things he was doing in his own personal time outside of the confines of the royal family, it becomes a lot harder to hide those things. So last episode was predominantly about Andrew and his relationship to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, although it should be very clearly stated that Sarah Ferguson also had a relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And even though she and Andrew are not together, they are both falling heavily on the funds, the finances, the helps that Epstein is willing to give in exchange for the connections they have. Epstein had the money, he wanted the connections. It's another reason why he got with Ghislaine Maxwell. She needed the money, which he had. She had the connections, which he wanted. I also thought it was really interesting in the last episode we were talking about how Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew, and Jeffrey Epstein were in this weird sort of triangular relationship. Not necessarily that they were all together at one time, the book didn't suggest that, but both men seem to have traded time with Ghislaine Maxwell sexually, which I find disgusting. But let's keep going. In this reading, we're going to keep talking about Andrew, but the first little section, because you know these larger chapters are divided into subsections. The first little section we're going to talk about is about Sarah. Once again, what's going on in the cesspool of her life. Only the most radical things you could never expect. Her story is so wild it's hard to believe. It's hard to take in how out of control her life is. And how she surrounds herself with these people who are also equally, if not competing against her craziness. Today we're talking about her personal dresser and how out of control that woman was. A couple of episodes ago, the author of this book said something that was so true. He said, Sarah had a way of both attracting money and spending money that mere mortals can hardly comprehend. But I also think she had a way of attracting some of the greatest cuckoos out there towards her. I mean, I guess like attracts like. But this next section, my jaw was on the floor the whole time. That's all I can say about that. All right, let's jump right back in. A murder close to home. Okay. At the beginning of October, returning to Sunninghill after taking her daughters to the cinema, the Duchess rammed the gates when they didn't open in time, causing thousands of pounds of damage. She claimed to be stressed, and perhaps for good reason. Days before, she had received a call from her former dresser, Jane Andrews, who was on the run from the police and had been arrested, having tried to take her own life, and charged with killing her boyfriend with a cricket bat. This woman was in your home dressing you, Sarah? Andrews had worked as Sarah's personal assistant from 1988 to 1997, where her tasks included shopping for the Duchess's clothes, as well as persuading top shops such as Harrods and Harvey Nichols to offer discounts and lend outfits. In 1989, aged 22, she had married the divorced Christopher Dunn Butler, 20 years older than her, who had briefly acted as Ferguson's accountant, but he divorced her after 5 years for adultery. The assistant had become a close confidant of the Duchess and, as an assistant accountant, privy to many of her financial affairs, until sacked, some said on cost-cutting grounds, others because Sarah suspected her of trying to be romantically involved with Gela Gheradesca. She even began to imitate Ferguson, adopting the same persona, dress, and speech patterns as her employer, and reputedly seducing Alan Starkey, one of the Duchess's former lovers, and, as you'll recall, one of the people who wrote a tell-all about her. The joiner's daughter from Cleethorpes had become so grand that Sarah had taken to calling her Lady Jane. After Andrews was let go, the Duchess had helped her find a job with Theo Fennell, but neither it nor a PR post at Claridge's had lasted. In 1998, she had met a businessman from a wealthy family, Tom Cressman, and moved in with him. 2 years later, on holiday in the south of France, the two got into an argument, during which Andrews stabbed him in the chest with a kitchen knife, beat him over the head with a cricket bat, and fled. After she was jailed for life, it emerged that royal aides believed Andrews had fleeced the Duchess for £10,000. Questions were asked how, despite her modest salary, she had managed to buy a flat facing Battersea Park and keep £50,000 in her bank account. It had been alleged she stole an even larger sum of money from the Duchess, but this has never been proved legally. So easily could she have done it. Sarah has no idea what's going on with the money. She has all of these accountants' assistants. This dresser also, according to this text, was working as an assistant accountant. She'd been married to one of Sarah's accountants. Of course, she could have easily taken Sarah's money, and Sarah would have been like, fiddly dee, I don't know. But that is the least of this girl's problems. Marrying people, getting into arguments, stabbing them with knives, beating them over the head, killing them, fleeing the scene, trying to kill herself, impersonating Sarah. Why, of all the people you can impersonate, would you be like, you know who I really want to be like? I want to be like that red-headed tornado who is telling dirty jokes and making everybody feel awkward all the live long. This person clearly had problems. But that's what I'm saying to you. She worked for 9 years for Sarah. At any of those points, could Sarah not have been like, you know what? I think I need to let you go. I feel like I would have realized that within the first year. This person couldn't have suddenly become crazy. This person was crazy for a while, but the thing is that Sarah's so crazy. How could she have detected it in others? Okay, continuing on. Let's move back to Prince Andrew. This section is entitled Foreign Antics. In October 2000, Andrew was in New York attending a dinner hosted by the Consul General, Thomas Harris. Afterwards, he went on to model Heidi Klum's annual Halloween party at the Hudson nightclub. Theme that year, Hookers and Pimps, led by Klum dressed in a black PVC catsuit, a spiked dog collar, and wrist restraints, and Ghislaine Maxwell as a prostitute in midriff-bearing gold trousers and a blonde wig. A few days later, the Duke headed to Los Angeles. At a dinner thrown for him in a local restaurant, he met a former Playboy model and actress, Denise Martell. Discovering she had a sweet tooth, Andrew ordered the dessert trolley and fed her a chocolate-covered strawberry. I took the entire strawberry in my mouth in one gulp, she later remembered. It was very suggestive. He loved it. By this time, he was holding hands with me under the table. Andrew invited her to the hotel, where they chatted in the bar until 2:15 a.m., before he walked her to her car and they kissed. He gave her his number on a piece of paper emblazoned with the motto, His Gloriousness, and they agreed to meet the next night at his £580 a night suite at the Bel Air Hotel. I absolutely wanted to make love to him, she remembered. We stayed on the couch, heavy petting. Heavy petting? Who says that? I was lying back in his arms. The evening ended inconclusively after Andrew fell asleep. Martell joined him in his room for a third night, after he had presented an award to Steven Spielberg at a BAFTA gala, bringing with her some melon-flavored candles because she thought that it had been too bright the night before. He stripped to his boxer shorts, and she lay beside him. Again he fell asleep, and she let herself out. Martell was shocked by the poor security. He gave his mobile number to me on the first night after I'd only known him a few hours. There was never any security there. I was very surprised. Can I just say real quick, I don't understand this whole thing about her bringing the candles. The guy's falling asleep on you night after night after night. You can't seem to get anywhere, which you have stated you wanted to sleep with him. He can't get past the quote-unquote heavy petting. He's passed out. And you think that the problem was that you needed lower lighting? That guy can't stay awake in a bright room. I don't think that's the problem here. Anyway, she went on to have a 5-year relationship with the prince until 2005, and made him godfather of her son, born in 2008. Martell claimed she didn't mind about Andrew's other women. She and the Duke remain in touch to this day. Probably she had other men. I mean, I think it was a relationship of convenience. Andrew chose to go on to Jeffrey Epstein's 8,000-acre ranch in New Mexico. According to his PPO, who kept a daily diary, the prince stayed in a 3-bedroom building near the ranch entrance. Zorro Ranch's former housekeeper, Deirdre Stratton, claims that over his 3-day stay, Andrew spent time with a young, beautiful neurosurgeon who kept him company. The neurosurgeon was Dr. Melanie Walker, whom Epstein had met while on a visit to New York after she graduated from the University of Texas. He told her that he could get her an audition to model for Victoria's Secret, an offer she turned down. But he had paid for her medical training, and on graduation, she had become the part-time science advisor for his foundation, before working in China with the World Health Organization. A former worker at the ranch thought her incredibly charming, one of the most intelligent figures I ever met in Jeffrey's world. She seemed to click with the Duke. She knew him better than anyone in that circle. They spent a lot of time together and were inseparable. Walker later met Steven Sinofsky, a senior executive at Microsoft, and in 2006 she joined the Gates Foundation. It was Walker who reputedly introduced Jeffrey Epstein to Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, with whom he was to become involved in several charitable ventures. She later became a professor of neurological surgery at the University of Washington School of Medicine. Walker had been one of the guests at Andrew's 40th birthday party the previous June. Interviewed in 2003, she claimed, "I've known Andrew almost 5 years. He's a good friend, but that's all it is. I probably see him for dinner at least once a year. He has a reputation as a womanizing sort of guy, but he's not. He calls me Mel and addresses me as hey dork or smarty pants. We speak mostly about science and medicine." Yeah, I bet you guys do. I don't think Andrew, the one who peed on someone's foot because they stepped on a sea urchin, and who came in proclaiming to the entire house, "The royal member did his duty," is talking to a neurosurgeon about science and medicine. In December 2000, Epstein, Ghislaine, Tom Pritzker, a woman called Kelly Spam, and an unnamed female landed at RAF Markham for a 2-day shooting party at Sandringham. Epstein in LLB in hunting boots and a $1,000 leather parka, where Andrew threw a surprise 39th birthday party for Ghislaine. As a side note, the footnote wants to remind you that Tom Pritzker was the chairman of Hyatt Hotels, and Virginia Giuffre later claimed that she was forced to have sex with Tom Pritzker. Now, as we've discussed many times on this channel, it's so unfortunate because some of Virginia's claims can be verified and some of them cannot be. She's made claims against certain people when it was suggested to her, "Do you think this person possibly also hurt you?" And then she would take the bait and say, "Yes, I bet he did." Because she probably was manipulated and used by many people. But I'm not sure about the verification of the claim that Tom Pritzker did anything to her. But the footnote just says he was one of the people that Virginia Giuffre did say had forced himself on her. The arrangement to allow the plane to land at the base was described as unusual by civil aviation sources, as Markham is the RAF's biggest frontline base and home to 4 Tornado squadrons. The Ministry of Defense insisted, however, that Epstein had been given no special treatment and that civil aircraft were routinely allowed to land there. Well, which is it? Are they or aren't they? On Boxing Day, Andrew boarded another plane, having accepted an invitation to stay at the Amanpuri Resort, the most expensive and exclusive hotel in Asia, where he was photographed on a yacht surrounded by topless women, and having a water fight with a socialite, Normandy Keith. The cuttings were faxed to Sarah, who was skiing in Verbier. There were reports he had wandered around the go-go bars in the red light district and attended a party thrown by Japanese fashion guru Kenzo Takada, at which most of the guests wore G-strings. Andrew wore a toweling toga. Andrew was drifting. A royal source let it be known that the Duke was not the most intelligent of men and was easily led. There's this specter of drugs hanging over almost everyone he's now associating with, and almost everywhere he goes. And it's really not something a man of his position, and a father of 2 young daughters, should be getting involved in. Under the headline, "Topless Beauties and Exotic Party Animals, Welcome to Andy's Troubling New Realm," the Daily Express called for the prince to be given a proper role. Having spent most of his life in institutions of some kind, from school to the Navy, he lacked the ability to manage his own life. Without the discipline of a timetable or a set of orders, he appeared rudderless. The solution lies in finding him something to do, and that function has to be found immediately, opined the tabloid. It's the same thing I said yesterday. I mean, he needs structures. He needs somebody to tell him what to do, and then he needs praise on the other side of it. He needs some kind of behavioral therapy. Andrew's new lifestyle could be traced back to his close relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. Over the previous year, he had been on 8 different breaks with her, with Jeffrey Epstein joining them on 5 of them. It was Ghislaine who had introduced Andrew to many of those women, with whom he had had brief flings. But she had also drawn him further into Epstein's net. A friend of Andrew's, close to his ex-wife, could see exactly what was happening. Ghislaine is manipulating him, and he's too naive to realize it. She's his social fixer, and he's going along with it. Why? Because I think Epstein's fantastically impressed by it all. It's all very premeditated. The friend called Andrew a poor judge of character, easily impressed, and characterized him as going from a couch potato to a man about town with nothing better to do than go on one holiday to the next. Ghislaine absolutely indulges him in whatever he wants to do next. When the Duchess was working in America, Andrew stayed up at Buckingham Palace in the week so that he could go out to clubs, not even returning to look after the children while their mother was away, according to the friend. He's spiraling out of control. He's even started dressing like a 25-year-old in jeans and blazer. He started having a girl massage him and manicure his toes. He even travels abroad with his own massage mattress. Please! In a few short months, Andrew, Duke of York, had embarked on a heady lifestyle in which he appeared to be rediscovering his youth, hooked by the wealth and reach of new friends and the doors they could open. It was to be a dangerous combination. Yeah, it's the clubbing that is so pathetic to me, but I think it's exactly like what the book is saying. Without somebody telling him what to do, he was never taught how to manage his time, never taught discipline outside of somebody else's idea of what discipline looks like for him. So at the age of 40, he's got no idea what he's supposed to do. Within the Navy, it's very clear what your next step's supposed to be. Within the military, it's very clear what your day looks like. But I think that because his personal life always was going to look different than other people's personal lives, he couldn't even look around at his friends and think, okay, how are they structuring their life? You know, I think there's a lot of people who, when they are feeling a little adrift and not sure what to do, you can usually find somebody, if not in your immediate social circle, there's some example of how you can pattern your life. But being a royal, you're not going to find, or you're not easily going to find somebody who can show you what to do. He can't entirely fall back on that because he's got an entire staff that would have gladly helped him. He has a mother who probably could have given him some guidance. She's very busy, but she certainly could have helped him. If he'd humbled himself and said, I want to do better, I want to be a responsible person. I think the thing is he just doesn't have a goal to be a responsible person. I don't think it's bothering him that he isn't acting in any kind of virtuous, responsible, manly way. I don't think that he has great goals and aspirations. I don't think he's looking at people in his life who really have it together, who are great fathers, great husbands, and thinking, how can I emulate that? I think right now his desires are very temporal. How can I have a good time right now? How can I meet all of my most hedonistic desires today? And he was married to somebody, in Sarah, who viewed the world very similarly. Part of the reason that I think that Andrew and Sarah were not able to grow, it's because they hadn't married somebody who challenged them to be better. When I think about who I was when I met my husband, I was a person who was getting B's in college when I should have gotten A's. I was a person who was kind of, I don't want to say phoning it in, but sort of like just not giving it my all. Like if I got the job done, that was good, but I wasn't worried about doing like staying up all night and doing like the best of the best of the best. Whereas when I met my husband, he was a go-getter, a goal setter. Like, this is how you do it. He had a plan. He had steps. It was, this is the way I'm going to go. And these are the steps I'm going to do to get there. And I really admired that because I wanted to be like that. But I was a procrastinator. I was a person who put things off to the last minute. I really struggled to see my goal, but then figure out the steps to get there. And after I married my husband, we've been married 15 years, I see so much more of my life structured after watching what he was doing. I saw how he did it, and then I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to organize myself, my day, my time, so I can get more things done. I won't put things off to the last minute. I mean, I still struggle with that. I still am a procrastinator at heart. But I found myself fighting that instinct after watching him just successfully get tasks done all day long. And thinking, I want to be more like that. But I don't know who I would have been if I'd married somebody who was as much of a procrastinator and just a general sort of like, I'm not going to call myself to the highest standard. Being married to somebody who's always trying to call himself to his highest standard, trying always to beat his personal best, it made me realize I can do more with the hours in my day. I can try harder. I can figure out how to meet this goal. All of this to say, Andrew and Sarah were both so similar in all of their worst character traits that I think they weren't able to encourage each other towards growth. Both of them were functioning at such a low level, and neither one of them had any character trait that was superior to the other one to sort of call out the better traits in the other one. There was no iron sharpening iron here. We're both like two blobs of blubber. It was just like nothing was going to get better here, and neither one of them was going to inspire the other one. So it's just, if anything, this is like such a lesson. Like, Don't marry somebody with all your worst features, I guess is what I'm saying. If you know that you're like the worst in all these areas, find somebody who isn't those things so that they can encourage you to do better. Okay, continuing on. This section is entitled Recollections May Vary. In March 2001, Jeffrey Epstein paid for a 6-week trip for one of the girls who worked for him. Virginia Roberts, subsequently Giuffre, born in August 1983, was 17. At the age of 14, she had briefly lived on the streets and been taken up by a 65-year-old sex trafficker, Ron Eppinger, with whom she had lived for 6 months. He later pleaded guilty to alien smuggling for prostitution, interstate travel for prostitution, and money laundering. Reunited with her father, who worked as a maintenance manager at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, Roberts had found work there as a spa attendant. In mid-2000, she met Ghislaine Maxwell at the club, and the socialite offered her a job, supposedly as a traveling masseuse for Jeffrey Epstein, but which would turn out to be her providing sexual services for his associates. In advance of the trip that she was about to take, Andrew picked out Virginia Roberts from several pictures emailed to him by Ghislaine, as if ordering from a catalog. The trip took in Paris, Spain, and Tangier before arriving in London on March 9th. According to Roberts, she stayed at Maxwell's house in Kinnerton Street in Belgravia, where on our first morning a chirpy Maxwell allegedly jumped on her bed and said, "Get up, sleepyhead, you got a big day. We've got to go shopping. You need a dress, as you're going to dance with the prince tonight." She was told to be smiley and bubbly because he was the queen's son. After a shopping spree at Burberry, they returned to Maxwell's home, where Virginia showered and dressed before joining her hosts at around 4 p.m. When I went downstairs, Ghislaine and Jeff were in a lounge. There was a knock at the door. Ghislaine let Andrew in. We kissed each other on the cheek. Ghislaine served tea from a porcelain pot and biscuits. She knew Sarah Ferguson, and they talked fondly about Andrew's daughters. The four of them went to dinner, then to the private nightclub Tramp, where Virginia said Andrew danced with her. Prince Andrew was like, "Let's dance together." And I was like, "Okay." And he was a hideous dancer, she claimed in an interview with NBC News in 2019. He was sweating profusely all over me. After an hour and a half at Tramp, they returned to Maxwell's home. All of us went upstairs, and I asked Jeffrey to snap a picture of me with the prince, Robert said. I wanted something to show my mom. The picture, which was to remain unknown for a decade, would prove Andrew's downfall. Yes, that's correct. That picture is so infamous. And of course, Andrew has always said that it's fake, it's not real. You can tell it's not real. Look how long my arm would have had to be to go around her. You guys, I don't know about all this, right? What we do know is that this guy was mixing and mingling with people who we know were in the business of sex trafficking people, who we know were in the business of getting young girls to do all kinds of things. The thing is, whether the picture is real or not is hardly where the story is going to begin or end. The picture is just one more element in a much broader story with much more context to it. You know, all of the trouble he's taken to try to debunk this picture, and, you know, he's got a couple of friends out there who are also saying it's not real, it's not a real picture, it's not, it's just somebody came up with the picture and put all the, Ghislaine and then him and then Virginia all together in a picture. It's just photoshopped, you guys, like way back before Photoshop was ever invented, but somehow they'd figured out a way to do it so it looked completely real. It doesn't actually matter. Yes, we don't need fake photographic evidence out there if indeed it were fake, but we have Andrew's whole lifestyle, his whole relationship to Epstein, the closeness of the two. What's one picture? It doesn't begin or end with one picture. It's really neither here nor there. Whether it's real or fake, it doesn't really progress the narrative or detract from the narrative. The narrative is what it is, and the picture's a sideshow. But it's not like, oh, well, if we can prove that picture is not true, then nothing that you did with Epstein is true. So I don't understand why he just hammers on about it. But he is naive. He is dumb. We know that. That's the word everyone uses about him. Naive, naive, naive. And anybody who doubted it, all they had to do was see that interview that we played a little clip of it at the beginning of last episode, where he's saying he didn't sweat. That person was the worst. When he was faced with some hard-hitting questions, he just didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to behave. His answers were so lame and so dumb, so naive. All I'm saying is this isn't a person who is adept at having to hide and to cover his tail. We saw his attempt to lie to us. It was like a 5-year-old with cookie crumbs all over their face saying, I don't know who ate all the cookies. This person is dumb. So I don't know if it's just that his whole life, his trouble had never caught up to him until the recent years. So he thinks he can just, barely excuse himself, and then we're all just going to be like, oh, okay, I guess he's telling the truth. He's foolish, so it doesn't surprise me he fell in league with these people. It was probably the best day ever when Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein found him for them. Because he's so gullible, but he has so much that he can offer them as far as connections, resources, not finances. He didn't really have any money, but he certainly could open doors for them. Even the fact that they're allowed to land their planes at a military base where civilian aircrafts were just not landing, but Epstein can do it. Even that kind of access. He just kind of greased the wheels of their life for them. And he's so dumb that they could have bent his arm to anything and he would have agreed to it. And now, Epstein's dead, Ghislaine's in prison, and Andrew's over there trying to cover his ass with such statements as, well, you see, I didn't used to sweat. What a bleep show this is. Well, that actually ends the rest of the Epstein section. The next time we come together on Monday, we're going to be reading the section entitled Special Representatives. So it's going to be pretty much more of the same. Andrew and Sarah trying to weasel their way and become legitimate, but they continue to engulf themselves in circles of illegitimate characters. Both of them are so ham-handed about everything that the fact that they have been only recently called to account is so shocking, and I can guarantee you that if they had not had the machinations of the palace behind them, the palace has a real desire to protect their reputation, which makes total sense. When you're trying to legitimize the monarchy with all of the naysayers out there, obviously detrimental if you have problematic narratives coming from problem people. Okay, so I understand, in theory, the desire to make sure the name stays clear. However, all this running around, spinning stories, shifting events, retelling, reshaping the narrative seems so counterproductive to me when what you could do is raise kids who know what's going on, teach kids how to be adults in this world, don't allow people to be spoiled little shits, make sure that the people that they're bringing into the clan are not people like Sarah Ferguson or Meghan Markle. Were real conversations being had with these people before they chose the losers? Were you teaching Andrew or Harry or way back when, Edward, who to choose? And were you making sure that they were whole people so they weren't these broken individuals wandering into the world picking the first clinger that comes on? Sarah, Wallace, Meghan, all three of those women were such opportunistic monsters, clinging to the royal family and then squeezing these men dry. And because all three of these men, incredibly broken people. Andrew broken, Harry broken, Edward broken. And all of them have these huge holes in their heart where they didn't have maternal love and affection. I know Andrew's mother did favor him, but even in its own way, there was a vacuum of true maternal affection because she gave him what he wanted. She did not question him. She never asked him, what are you doing? And that's its own kind of vacuum, because what you need is a parent. You need people who are going to shape you. You need people who are going to show you how to be in this world. And all three of these people did not have it. So then they go out and they find these substitute women to come into their lives, to mold, to make, to shape them. And they're incredibly destructive people. But the palace is really, really tight on the let's save our name game, but they're not tight on let's raise men who can be leaders. Let's make sure that they're not choosing losers. Let's make it that they're such solid guys they wouldn't want to choose a loser. William seems like a person who was not a mess, and that's why he didn't choose a mess. It's frustrating to me that we're sitting back watching the palace work so hard to cover their ass. But, third generation in, we still haven't figured out how to do this. The kids need to be raised from little kids on how to be leaders. They need to be given real life coping mechanisms, patterns and habits of behavior that will lead to thriving adults. It's not enough to say, well, he's going to have staff and help and stuff. They're not taking the advice of the staff and the help. And that staff and that help, there's turnover there. This person needs to be able to rely on the seeds that were planted in his heart as a youngster. So that it doesn't matter who my staff is. It doesn't matter what wild worlds are going on around me. I know how to stay the course. I know how to be diligent, perseverant. I know what grit determination looks like. I know what the goal is. I know how to build steps to get to that goal. I know how to be a leader for my wife, for my children, for the country that's looking at me as this person who has been placed, against my will perhaps, but that's the role I have, as somebody who is going to be or should be a model of virtue. Somebody who cares about the poor and the needy, who's been given a place, an elevated place, a privileged role. And with that, I'm going to do something for my community. It's a very clearly defined role, but you have to give pride in their hearts for what they've been given to do. All of these people seem to resent the role. Edward resented the role. Harry resented the role. Andrew resents the role. They all resent this responsibility because nobody taught them how to carry it. If you were taught how to carry it, it seems like you take a lot of pride in that. Not that it's a role you earned, but it was a role you were given. So what am I going to do with that? Not everybody has the opportunity to be a beacon of light and hope for my community, but I get that. I get to do that. Okay, anyway, let's meet back here on Monday for more of the book. And of course, on Friday, we have the Friday News Roundup. I'll see you guys then. I cannot wait. We've got lots to talk about. See you soon. Bye.